Okay, so the Georgetown University Law Center, Black Law Student Association. This is a petition. These are always fun because they're almost never written very well. It's really common for the writers to get too emotionally involved in the preparation of these things and they start to veer off from normal discourse. But the petition does offer some real insights into the thinking of these students. Hello out there. I am trying to get through.
With his powerful brainwaves cradled in the warmth of reasoning, it's time for Johnnie Walker Dredd to straighten you out on a thing or two. Emanating all the way from exciting Las Vegas, Oklahoma, it's the Johnnie Walker Dredd Show.
We talked about these two Georgetown law professors got in hot water over a comment that one of them made in a private Zoom call.
They were a bit jumbled.
Yeah.
It's the best way I can put it. It's like, okay, let me reason through that, what you just said, kind of thing. Yeah, right. Unfortunately. And you know what? I hate to say this. I end up having this, angst every semester that a lot of my lower ones are Blacks. Happens almost every semester. And it's like, oh, come on. Get some really good ones, but there are also usually some that are just plain at the bottom. It drives me crazy.
Yeah.
So we have here a petition, and this is for the Black Law Students Association. Oh, by the way, you might want to, in the future, turn off the editing. This is embarrassing. Make a copy of your final draft. Release that. So it shows us where they've made suggestions on changes and things like that. So I won't read this first one. It just rehashes what was said before. Professor Sellers was speaking in reference to the only Black student in her class. Okay, again, that could be a sort of a federal issue there. She needs to be careful. Needs to lawyer up soon. And I know that she's a law professor. Doesn't matter. She needs to lawyer up. She stated that this Black student was being placed at the bottom of the grading curve for the class. No, she was not being placed at the bottom of the grading curve. That's where he scored. Whether his score was fair or not is something that you can ask, but you can't say that she placed him at the bottom of the curve. The school has since taken down the recording after it was discovered and reported by a student, like they were supposed to do. These racist statements reveal not only Sellers' beliefs about Black students in her classes, but also how her racist thoughts have translated to racist actions. Again, she didn't make the claim that she was scoring Black students on purpose. Professor Sellers' bias has impacted the grades of Black students in her classes historically. In her own words, false. She did not say that. Reading comprehension, man, it's a good idea. We demand nothing short of the immediate termination of Sandra Sellers as adjunct professor at Georgetown University Law School. Not suspension, not an investigation. Don't even investigate this. Fire her. This is a law student telling the university that we have a complaint about a professor and you are not to do an investigation. You are just to fire that professor because we want it. The university must take swift and definitive action in the face of blatant and shameless racism. Not only is this situation revealing of Sellers' true beliefs about Black students, it is also illustrative of the conscious and unconscious bias systematically present in law school grading at Georgetown Law and in law school classrooms nationwide. No, it is not. The professors were asking whether they thought that such bias might be an explanation for their students' low scores. The difference is that Sellers was caught and her racism was broadcast for the world to see. We demand that Georgetown Law take action in the form of the immediate termination of Professor Sandra Sellers. requiring a public apology from Professor David Batson in his failure to adequately condemn Sellers' statements, critically assessing and improving its current subjective grading system. In other words, we need you to find a way for black students to score higher, including an audit of Professor Sellers' past grading and student evaluations to account for her admitted biases. She did not admit biases. And committing to hiring more black professors who will be better situated to fairly assess black students in a non-biased manner. So we got rid of Whitey. We need to hire some black professors to replace her. Failure to do so supports maintaining the status quo, protects racist professors, and endangers black students' academic success at Georgetown. In addition to her racist comments, Sellers' remarks were also rooted in ableist undertones. Oh, this is where it gets really good. She stated regarding this black student, when he did talk, they were a bit jumbled. It's the best way I can put it. It's like, okay, to let me reason through that, what you just said. This is a negotiations class. Part of negotiating is being clear about what you want, your demands. That's crucial. And what she was complaining about was, it looks like it was some sort of presentation or an essay he turned in that she couldn't follow the logic, that it was twisted. That's a problem. And it certainly seems like it was especially egregious, because why would you sit around and talk on a Zoom session after class is over unless it was particularly poor? And so they're saying that complaining about a student's jumbled thoughts, jumbled presentation is ableist. That students have poor construction, poor syntax, because they're disabled. In making these comments, Sellers alluded to her opinion that this student's articulation diminished his intellectual value in the classroom. It does. This is a negotiations class. An inability to articulate your demands is a problem. You can be graded on that. Sellers' comment was directed solely at the speaking ability of the one black student. Sellers' method of student evaluation, as evidenced by this recording, directly discriminates against black students, students from diverse backgrounds, and students with disabilities. Further, the other professor in the video, David Batson, initially nodded in agreement with several of Sellers' statements. So nodding in agreement is a problem. Batson subsequently stated that what drives him crazy is the concept of how that plays out, and whether that his own perceptions playing in here with certain people, or his own unconscious biases playing out in the scheme of things. While these comments certainly show more awareness than that of Professor Sellers, his actions were still altogether insufficient to address the blatant racism that he was an audience to. Nice dangling preposition, asshole. He had an obligation to report her, and he did not. We demand that Batson publicly apologize for his role in enabling and supporting Sellers' behavior. So basically, Batson is into this and goes, I kind of wonder if my own biases are playing a role in this. And they're condemning him for it. We would note that early this year, BLSA released a statement condemning the actions of Georgetown law professor emeritus Carrie Menkel-Meadow, who used the N-word in class. You're doing a petition, jackass. Do not bring up other issues. This has nothing to do with this petition. This professor then doubled down in defending her actions. What does that have to do with Sellers and Batson? Georgetown law took no action against this professor, despite our own statement and 2 meetings between administration officials and BLSA representatives. They did nothing. She retains her title and benefits because they did an investigation. And when they did the investigation, they found out what? Well, it turns out that she didn't use the N-word in class. She sent out an assignment that had the N-word in it. It was an assignment on racism. In that context, the use of the word might be appropriate. But what does that have to do with Sellers and Batson? I'll tell you what it has to do. This other professor got away with it. Therefore, we demand to make up for that, you go after these professors. That's what it comes down to. They want retribution against these professors because somebody else they think got away with something. Further, last summer, BLSA and the Student Bar Association co-authored a resolution calling for mandatory implicit bias training for all faculty. This mandatory training has not since been adopted by Georgetown law. And guess what it's going to say? Have conversations with your fellow faculty about the implicit biases that you might have. That's what it's going to train the professors to do. Exactly what they were doing. As Dean Triner, Dean of Georgetown University Law Center, said last summer, in this social climate, the Law Center must reaffirm our core commitment as a community and as individuals. We must recommit to the struggle for the equal treatment of all people and to the fight against racism in all its forms. Blah, blah, blah. Therefore, as an institution committed to anti-racist proactivity, we call for the immediate termination of Professor Sellers from her position as an adjunct professor by the Georgetown University Law Center administration on behalf of black members of the Georgetown community. Poorly written. Gee, I mean, you see some of the problems right here. Sincerely, the Georgetown Black Law Students Association. So now you have a student, gives a presentation, it's jumbled and it's all over the place. It's disabled. You can't score him down for that. You'd be ableist doing that. Another professor questions their own biases. You have to condemn that professor or face termination yourself. Batson, by the way, resigned. He's gone.